Well, hi, everybody. I'm Don Stewart, and welcome to our second edition of Breaking News for this Wednesday. It is the 19th day of November, 2025. And a number of stories have come across the wires in the last few hours that again support the biblical predictions of what's going to take place in our world in the last days before the second coming of Jesus Christ. And the many events it predicts that will precede it. In fact, we see Russia and Iran back in the headlines together. We see Russia on its own in the headlines. We see Hamas now rebuilding its terror network. Discoveries have been made in Europe, actually, about what they're doing. And also, Israel, as always, is in the middle of all of this, just as we would expect if the Bible is what it claims to be, the Word of the living God. And of course it is. So let's look at these stories. Five headlines. First, from the Jerusalem Post. Now, this one's interesting. First international force to be deployed to Gaza in early 2026, a U.S. official tells the Post. Well, we'll see about that. Now, there's a lot of things we don't know about that, but this is since the UN resolution was, accepted and voted on and passed a couple of days ago, it seems they're getting the show on the road here. All right, so we'll talk about that in a minute. And then Mossad. Mossad is like the MI5 or the CIA. They've uncovered a Hamas terror network operating in Europe. This is from Israel National News. And again, this is not surprising because remember, we talked recently about a story about Hamas is basically stashing weapons, larger weapons, destructive weapons in various spots around the world, including Yemen and places in Africa. And so finding a terror network operating in Europe is not surprising. Hamas will never stop trying to destroy Israel is the bottom line for that. Now, also a story we did a while back this is from Israel HaYom. It's an update of this. Iranian secret Russia visit aimed at validating nuclear weapon design. We talked about this a while back. And there were rumors of that and testimony to this, but now it seems there's a smoking gun. They found some documents showing a secret Russian visit, I think it was last year, in Iran. And we'll talk about this that has Russia helping Iran with its nuclear weapons program. So again, we're moving forward in that direction as we have been expecting. And then two stories on Russia itself. World War III watch. Several NATO nations scramble jets as Russia airstrike kills at least 20, including children. It's a Breitbart story. And then this story, we will respond and not just diplomatically, warns Poland after Russian terror attack on a NATO railway. Another Breitbart story. All right. As we will document, these stories confirm what we've written in our book, 25 Signs. We're near the end. The book is a free download from our website, Educating Our World, under the heading of Bible Prophecy. Please take advantage of it. All right, here we go. Headline number one, first international force to be deployed to Gaza in early 2026, a U.S. official tells the Jerusalem Post. For now, the training for the force's deployment to Gaza has not yet begun, and efforts are still underway to secure the extensive funding required for the International Stabilization Force operations in the Strip. Shortly after the UN Security Council approved a resolution establishing this multinational force called the ISF, or International Stabilization Force, to be deployed into the Gaza Strip, the U.S. administration began accelerating its formation. The first ISF soldiers are expected to arrive in the Gaza Strip in early 2026, a U.S. official told the Jerusalem Post. The official added at this stage a handful of countries have expressed interest in contributing troops to the force. Now, he did not specify which countries they were, but another official who spoke with the Post said that Azerbaijan and Indonesia are currently the two most likely to send soldiers. For now, training for the force's deployment to Gaza has not yet begun, and efforts are still underway to secure the extensive funding required for the ISF operations in the Strip. A diplomatic source told the Post that in addition to the Arab states, European countries have also been approached for assistance on the matter. Now, here's the problem. There's no mention as to where they would be stationed in Gaza. Would it be where Israel's occupying or where the other side where Hamas is occupying? On the Israeli side or the Hamas side? So we'll have to wait and see who they are and where they will go. Since Hamas is not disarmed, the assumption is that they will be in the area in Gaza that Israel now occupies. We don't see them. We can't see them going and trying to take the weapons away from Hamas. That would be a bloodbath. And so if that happens, as we assume it will, be Israel that does it. Now, as usual, there's so much about this peace plan that remains unsettled. What it does illustrate is sign seven of our 25 signs. We're near the end. There'll be a continual search for peace in Israel. And like we say, almost every story shows this continual search for peace just never occurs. It's getting worse and worse and worse. Israel basically has seven different areas that are attacking it, seven different, places, including, Gaza, including Hezbollah in Lebanon, including Iran, including the West Bank. And so we've got a lot of different places, the Houthis in Yemen, the terrorist groups in Iraq that are still, building up and getting ready to, either attacking or trying to lick their wounds. The ones that have been harmed before by Israel are kind of put down to a degree. They're trying to build back up what they were before to attack Israel again. So it never, bottom line, is it just never ends. All right, now this interesting story here, not surprising. The Mossad, again, Israel's MI5 or CIA, uncovers Hamas terror network operating in Europe. This is from Israel National News. Cooperation between the Mossad and European intelligence agencies led to the thwarting of terror infrastructure and the arrest of operatives working to promote attacks against Israelis and Jews. A prolonged investigation by the Mossad, that's Israel's intelligence agency, together with intelligence and law enforcement bodies in Europe, has led to the exposure of terrorist infrastructure that Hamas sought to build across the continent to advance attacks on who? Well, Israelis and Jewish targets. As part of the operations, counterterrorism activities were carried out in Germany, Austria, and other countries, during which weapons caches were uncovered, and operatives involved in establishing the network were arrested. In September, in a September operation in Vienna conducted by the Austrian Security and Intelligence Service, that's called the DSN, authorities discovered a weapons hideout containing handguns and explosive devices. The investigation of those involved revealed the cache belonged to Mohammed 9, the son of Bassam 9, a senior official in Hamas's political bureau in Gaza and a close associate of its leader, Kahil al-Hayya. The probe also uncovered a meeting between the two in Qatar around the same period, pointing to possible involvement of the Hamas leadership in advancing terror activity in Europe. Remember, they go after Jews and Israelis anywhere in the world. It's not just in Israel. It's a worldwide problem. The extensive investigation of the terror network also focused on the involvement of Hamas figures in Turkey, which is considered a convenient arena for the organization's activity. A Turkey, a member of NATO, trying to horn in on this whole peace plan in Gaza with its own soldiers, is hugely part of the problem, as is Qatar. Okay, so this is a problematic here. They're considered a convenient arena. In fact, it's between both Qatar and Turkey that these leaders of Hamas travel back and forth and stay under great protection. As part of this, in November, the article says, German authorities arrested this person, Barhan al-Khatib, a key operative in the network, after a return to Turkey following what appeared to be the completion of his operational missions in Europe. So they're working all the time, everywhere. European security bodies continue to expand their efforts against Hamas on legal and diplomatic fronts as well, including the closure of associations and religious institutions used by the organizations for fundraising and recruitment. These steps accompanying the thwarting operations reflect Europe's growing recognition that Hamas has sought to deepen its activity on the continent since the events of October 7th. Because Hamas is believed to, in their own mind, and to a degree it's true, achieve so much success in the October 7th, 2023 attacks, they're growing. They're recruiting from all over the world. They're getting people to join them in their terrorist activities, again, specifically against Jews and Israelis. So the Mossad continues to cooperate, we're told, with intelligence services around the world and to thwart literally dozens of attack plots directed at Israeli Jews and civilian targets. These efforts continue as part of its responsibility to counter terrorism in the international arena and to safeguard the security of the State of Israel and its citizens, the intelligence agency said in a statement. Wow. Now, this is not surprising. We reported the other day, remember, Hamas had been stockpiling weapons in other countries, Yemen and in Africa, countries in Africa, as they rearm. And as we've emphasized from the beginning, they will never quit, never, ever, ever, in their quest to destroy Jews, the nation of Israel. This also illustrates sign seven, Israel's continual search for peace. And that's why Hamas will never lay down its weapons, never give up, and they will fight literally to the last man. All right, three stories now involving Russia. The first one, Iranian in Russia. Iranian secret Russian visit aimed at validating nuclear weapon design. New documents. Here we go. New documents. Smoking gun reveal covert trips by Iranian scientists to Russia seeking laser technology, triggering snapback sanctions amidst the 2025 nuclear tensions. It's from the Financial Times of London. A second clandestine visit by Iranian nuclear scientists to Russia occurred last year, aiming to secure technology with potential weapons applications, the Financial Times reported. The trip involved the SPND, that's an Iranian military unit accused by the U.S. of leading nuclear weapons research, and Russian military institutes. Documents obtained by the Financial Times, and here's the key, provide the first evidence, the smoking gun, of Moscow engaging Tehran on nuclear knowledge. Jim Lampson, a former CIA analyst, told the outlet that Tehran's experts were seeking laser technology and expertise that could help them validate a nuclear weapon design without conducting a nuclear explosive test. Now that's scary. Validate a design that works without even conducting a nuclear test. Because when you conduct a nuclear test, whether it's underground or wherever, it can be discovered one way or another. So these documents seem to be the smoking gun. And it complements, like we said, an earlier story we did a while back about Russia continuing to help Iran with their nuclear technology. And of course, the Bible says Iran will join Russia in this last days invasion of Israel, as predicted in Ezekiel 38:39. It's sign number 9 of our 25 signs in the last days. Certain specified nations will invade Israel. So what do we see? Iran and Russia working together again. And we always want to emphasize this. Never in the history of the human race have these two geographical areas, what is modern day Russia and modern day Iran, have ever worked together militarily. Never. But the Bible predicts they're going to work together militarily in the last days. And voila, exactly what we see. Incredible, isn't it? Okay, two headlines about this recent attack by Russia. And the headline on Breitbart is this: World War III watch. Several NATO nations scramble jets as Russian airstrike kills at least 20, including children. The air forces of several NATO states were scrambled overnight to protect the airspace of the alliance along its eastern border as Russia launched one of its deadliest airstrikes against Ukraine's western regions of the war so far. Polish, Romanian, German, Spanish, Norwegian, and Dutch fighter jets were scrambled in two deployments in airspace bordering Ukraine over Poland and Romania, and the Russian armed forces hammered Western Ukraine. According to Kiev, Russia launched 476 drones, 47 cruise missiles, and one ballistic missile in strikes across the country, but particularly on western cities, and two western cities they mentioned here. At least 20 people have been found dead in a city called Ternopil, which is approximately 225 miles west of the Ukrainian capital Kyiv and 110 miles short of the Polish border. Of the killed, at least 2 were children, and a further 66 were wounded, including 16 children, in the strikes, which badly damaged 2 apartment blocks. Now, Russia, according to the Bible, will be the nation that leads this end-time coalition. Again, sign 9. They're going to be the leaders. It's a Russian-led coalition. The leader will be, his title is Gog, G-O-D. That's not his name. He will be a Russian leader, as we document in our book, 25 Signs Are Near the End. We have another book called Ezekiel 38:39 Invasion, where we have a whole appendix explaining how Russia involved, and it's going to be Rosh, the Hebrew term there in Ezekiel 38 refers to modern day Russia, not because it sounds like Russia, but because it is Russia. We talk about that. We have about a dozen different lines of evidence that that's the case. And again, that book is also a free download from our website, Educating Our World, under the heading of Bible Prophecy. So anyway, Russia is going to be the big player at the time of the end in the Middle East. So they have to be able, and here's the key, they have to be strong, they have to be threatening to be able to align these other nations with them. And we know Russia has nuclear weapons, and whether they use them or not, that's a huge, huge threat. That's why these articles at Breitbart always say World War III watch, because they could, either accidentally or somehow cause a third world war. Because as we know, as the next story is going to tell us, we've got Poland now wanting to get into the fray here. We will respond, and not just diplomatically. Headline 5 warns Poland after Russian terror attack on NATO railway. Poland is closing the final remaining consulate in response to a false flag act of state terrorism, which saw a strategic railway used to supply Ukraine with war material bombed by saboteurs at the weekend. Poland's foreign minister Radoslav Sikorski, who has long been extremely hawkish on Russia, as many in Poland are, announced that the country would be sending a diplomatic note to the Russian Federation on Wednesday morning, that's today, withdrawing consent for its final operating consulate. Poland has gradually been closing Russian consulates in recent years in response to alleged Russian state-sponsored terror attacks against Poland, and until today, the only remaining diplomatic outposts are a consulate in the northern port city of Gdansk and the Russian embassy in Warsaw. Okay, again, Russia is playing with fire. Poland is a member of NATO, and we know if there is any attack on Poland, then each NATO country is obliged to go to war and help them. Now, we don't know if this is going to happen, but we know it's certainly possible. And so, bottom line here with these stories, so much is going on in so many places that the Bible specifically mentions about the last day scenario. And so the scenario continues to play out. As we emphasize, we do not know what will happen in the short term. We do not know. Nobody does, so we don't speculate. But we certainly do know what's going to happen in the long term because the Bible tells us how all this is going to end. What we do know is that evil will increase as we get closer to the time of the end. And at a time like this, it's incumbent upon believers, as the Bible says, to both watch and pray. So let's continue to do that. I'm Don Stewart. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be back again tomorrow with another edition of Breaking News. Until then, as always, may the Lord richly, richly bless you.